Hi, so this is evaluation question 4, where I'm going to be looking at how I've used new media technologies in the development of my project in the planning, research, production and then evaluation stages. I'm going to look at some few different sections, different tools that I've used throughout these sections and say how I've used them and how they've affected my project. So to start with, I'm going to talk about the planning and research sections. Now for these I've used a few different technologies, mostly through the Google services, Google App Services, such as Gmail, Google Drive, Google Docs and Google Calendar. I've used these to create some of the documents, so to create my shooting schedule, my shot list, my plan. I've used the Google Calendar to keep me on track, to keep me up to date with my shooting schedule and organise myself and organise my time throughout making the project. I've used Gmail to communicate with other people, for example to plan or to send them off a test copy or some test shooting and see whether they like it or not, and for them to get back to me. I've also used YouTube a lot, using YouTube and its massive collection of footage to put together, to bring together lots of different media to evaluate what I want to use. So it's got such a wide wealth of documentaries aimed at anyone, such as on channels like Vox or Vice or the BBC Three channel itself. These different places where you can go to get examples of real media text that I've used to try and emulate or to try and take ideas from to spot the conventions. I've also used WordPress to publish all of my findings and evidence for my blog. And I've used WordPress has got a lot of tools built in, and I especially like about it the fact that you put your updates in a post format. So it's like just a little block of text and you say, this is what I've done here, and it all comes up in chronological order, and you can show how the project has gone from start to finish, and you can just update as you go. And it makes it really easy to put together a massive wealth of evidence to say this is what I've done and how I've done it. I've also used Scribd, which is an online tool to publish docs. So you can make a document in loads and loads of different formats, but once you upload it to Scribd, it processes it and puts it together in a way where it can be viewed on many different devices. Especially I've used it to embed documents into my WordPress blog. That resizes them and optimizes them for the device that they're being viewed on to make sure that they look the best at each point. In my production stage is probably the most evident use of new media technologies. Now I've separated this out into kind of two sections. I've got the cameras that I've used and the software that I've used to put it together. The cameras that I've used in this, I've used three different ones. I've used a Canon 1200D, a Canon Bridge camera, which is what's being shot on right now, and a GoPro Hero 3. Now these cameras have all got various advantages and drawbacks, and I'm going to go over each one, but I'd just like to cover at the start. Having three cameras to cover all the action is by far the best way of doing it, because I can be operating one camera, I can leave the GoPro fixed in the room, for example, to take a wide shot, or give it to a person doing an activity and get a point of view shot, or I can have it running a time lapse to get lots of different types of footage. Now, GoPros are really versatile with where you can put them, but you haven't got really many options when it comes to shooting different shots. So you can just fix them and leave them, and they're great for that. And they've got a long battery life and a long shooting time, but you can't use them to get some of the more in-detailed shots. Now for that, I've used my A and B cam, which are the 1200D, as I said, and the Canon Bridge camera that you can see now. The 1200D it's a DSLR camera, and it's very versatile. You can use it for so many different things. I was running with an 18 to 55 millimeter lens on it. It's a high quality lens, and you can use these features to get lots of different effects. One of the main things that I've used is to get shallow depth of field, to really blur out the background but keep the subject in focus nice and close. And it's very high quality, and it looks really great, but they are more complex to use, and they're a lot heavier, and they're often quite expensive and delicate, so you don't want to take that to too many places. I've also used the Canon Bridge camera that you see now, It's really light, it's easy to use, it's quick, it's got a really long zoom lens, so when you can't get as close to the action, as has been the case quite a lot through shooting, when you can't really get nice and close, you need to stay back for safety reasons, you keep that distance and you don't have to get so close. However, there are a few drawbacks to this bridge camera. It doesn't have great low light performance at all, because it's a cheaper camera. It just doesn't have as good a sensor, plus the ISO on it generally relies on being a lot lower. The long zoom capability is good, but it's once you get quite away, it is digital zoom, not optical zoom, so you lose a lot of quality through that. It does shoot HD video, 1080p 24 frames per second, which is what I'm working with, but it's at a slightly lower bit rate than the 1200D, so there is a noticeable difference between the bridge camera footage and the Canon 1200D when if you're looking at it really closely. But it does shoot with very small files, which means you can take a lot more on the same size card each time. Secondly, the software that I've used to put this together. Now, I've used all products from the Adobe suite. I've used Adobe Photoshop to put together my Ancillary 1 task, which is a poster. I've used Premiere Pro and After Effects to put together my main task, After Effects for the graphics, and Premiere Pro to edit the main task together. And I've used Premiere again for my Ancillary 2 task. Now, Premiere is a massive program, and it's incredible, and you can use that to varying levels of complexity. So I've used it in kind of a mid-range because it's got multi-track video editing, which is very important when you're putting together a project of this size. You need to be able to layer up video and audio clips, which software such as iMovie won't let you do. It's got lots of effects and plugins. For example, one that I've used quite heavily is the color correction plugin to tweak color levels of blues and greens and to adjust hue and saturation overall. It's also got a advanced time remapping plugin to slow things down and speed things up, but without having the framing, the obvious framing that you get where you can see each picture moving on to the next. It removes that effect. You can also use complex timeline techniques such as nesting and sequencing to put together really complex build-ups of sequences. And you've also got advanced Pro audio control to let you adjust levels across multiple tracks. Another piece of Adobe software that I've used is Adobe Photoshop. Now, Photoshop is very popular for image editing and photo editing, and I've used it to put together my Ancillary 1 task, which is a poster or magazine entry. It works really well. It's got such a vast range of plugins. You can use it to put together so many different effects, or put together so many different bits and pieces. I've used it to layer up and then separate out different parts of an image. So my backplate image is then pulled apart into two sections so that I can put thumbnails and a montage behind one part of the image but in front of the other. This layering process is not really offered by any other image editing program, and because Photoshop is so popular, there's lots of help and tutorials on the internet to help you put together different things for all skill sets. So I'm quite new to Photoshop, so I've been very grateful that I can use the Adobe support section to learn how to do different functions and features of the software. Another piece of software that I've used is Adobe After Effects. I've used this to put together the animated graphics at the start of my video and at the end of my video. Adobe After Effects, again, is a huge system with such a vast range of options for putting together visual effects. Because it is so popular, again, there's lots of help online that you can get to help to do certain things for all skill levels. Again, I'm quite new to that, so being able to access the Adobe support section has been really helpful to learn new techniques and new skills. You have lots of controls, and there's so much you can do involving animation or effects or layering lots of different things you can use to put together to make these quite complex and interesting graphics. And I've used them to animate in and then out different sections of logos to make them look more interesting instead of just them fade in and fade out, or them cut in and cut out, just to make it a lot more interesting and look more professional and smooth. The downside of Adobe After Effects is it can become very complicated, very complex, and because it is so huge, there's so much that it can go wrong. So you have to know quite well what you're doing, and it is quite a big program. So you have to have quite a powerful computer to run it on in order to perform these visual effects and then export them to run them into Premiere. And finally, I'm going to talk about the technologies that I've used in the publishing and the evaluation sections. Mostly, I have to say, it's been YouTube, Prezi, and Scribd to put together and then publish the different materials that I've made. So YouTube, as I said before, is a massive service that I've been using to publish videos and then be able to share them with everyone and put them on my blog. YouTube also encodes and processes the videos once you've uploaded them into their own format and optimizes them for any device, so they can be viewed on a mobile device, on a really poor internet connection, and that will still work fine, or they can be viewed on a HD television with a great internet connection at a higher quality, and it will look the best that it can for each of those devices. It's also really easy to copy and paste a link and send it to somebody through Gmail, or to attach it to a WordPress post, or send it to somebody so that they can have a look. Prezi is an interactive presentation software that you can use that I've used to create kind of a map or something that users can look around. They can drag and drop around this screen to have a look at the different sections that you've put on. And it gives a 3D style of arrangement, and it allows users to really see links between the different sections and the flow of a project or a program. And then again, I've used WordPress as my main publishing outlet to really organise and structure chronologically the work that I've done to put on there to then send off. In conclusion, I've used a wide range of digital technologies using the internet, and both through internet services and downloaded onto my computer to develop and make my media project the best that it can be and the most suited for a professional environment, as it's aimed to be sent out online through the internet to my target audience. I hope this has covered all the areas that it needs to, and that you've seen how I've used as many digital technologies to really make my project the best that it can be.